Motivation is the most accepted lie of our time. It comes like the wind and vanishes the moment you need it most. That is why so many live in cycles. They start projects full of energy, only to stop at the first obstacle. What few understand is that the greatest results in history never depended on fleeting inspiration. They were born from relentless consistency. Miyamoto Musashi won more than 60 duels not because he woke up motivated, but because he trained every single day in the same way, even when his body begged for a rest and his mind wanted to quit. He knew that silent discipline is worth more than 1,000 bursts of euphoria. In this video, you will discover how to become so consistent that results appear inevitably, even without motivation. 6 of Musashi's principles will show you how to turn consistency into destiny. And it all begins with the first step most never take: walking alone. Consistency is not built in the crowd, but in silence. Musashi discovered this when he wrote The Way of Walking Alone in his final years. He retreated to Ryagendo Cave, not out of contempt for people, but because he understood an unshakable truth: the mind that depends on company will never be free. Solitude was not the absence of people, but the presence of himself. He knew that only those who can sustain their own decisions without needing external validation achieve true firmness. While others sought masters, advice, and applause, Musashi sharpened his sword and his mind in the cold darkness of the cave. Now think of modern life. How many of your choices are truly your own? You cannot go 10 minutes without checking notifications, without sharing your doubts to hear what others think. Even your most intimate decisions end up posted online, as if digital approval were your compass. And when that approval doesn't come, your conviction collapses. Consistency begins when you prove to yourself that you can decide without witnesses. Test yourself, choose a meaningful decision, and make it alone. Don't ask, don't consult, don't research. Feel the discomfort of carrying the weight of your own choice, because that weight is exactly what strengthens your mental muscles. You will see that your mind, once fragile and dependent, begins to sustain itself. A person who needs others to keep walking will always falter when others step away. But one who walks alone learns to be unbreakable. Those who need others to keep walking will never be consistent. Musashi lived as few would dare. He slept both on soft fields and on hard rocks, ate banquets when available, and plain rice when nothing else remained. This was not misery, it was training. He understood that the true enemy of consistency is not effort, but the oscillation between chasing pleasure and avoiding pain. Look at most people. They act when it feels good and quit when it hurts. They go to the gym if they feel like it, study when inspired, work hard only when in the mood. This dependency creates fragile lives, because when pain comes, and it always comes, their routine shatters. Musashi discovered the secret was to remain the same in any scenario, not to exalt in comfort, not to break in discomfort. He trained his body and mind to remain steady in the face of extremes. That balance made him unstoppable, because neither pleasure nor pain had power over him. Modern life weakens us because it eliminates discomfort, air conditioning at the slightest heat, food delivered in minutes, endless distractions at one click. The more comfortable life becomes, the more unbearable even small challenges feel. The result is a generation incapable of enduring minor frustrations, let alone great battles. The protocol is simple. Practice conscious alternation. One day hot showers, the next cold. One day abundant meals, the next minimal. The rule is not to suffer, but to keep the same inner state in both scenarios. If your attitude shifts, you are still a slave. If you remain stable, you are free. Power is born when comfort no longer dictates your action, and pain no longer interrupts it. This is the point at which consistency begins to turn indestructible. When comfort can't control you, discomfort can't break you. In his writings, Musashi left a number: 1,000 days to develop, 10,000 to polish. He was not only speaking of sword technique, but of the mind. Consistency is only born when repetition turns into identity. Think about it. Most people can't hold a habit for even 7 days. Miss motivation? They quit. Had a bad day? They abandon everything. But Musashi knew strength lies in daily repetition, until what you do is no longer effort, but nature. He practiced the same downward cut with his sword every day, thousands of times. He did not seek variety, but depth. In today's world, we are addicted to novelty. New methods, new courses, new 30-day challenges. We jump from one habit to another as if switching apps on a phone. This addiction to always starting over is exactly what keeps us from ever finishing. The protocol is brutal in its simplicity. Choose one mental practice and repeat it for 1,000 days. It may be how you respond to criticism, how you focus, how you make decisions. It doesn't matter what. What matters is repeating without fail. If you fail, restart the count. Because consistency is only born when there is no longer room for inner negotiation. After 1,000 days, the practice is no longer something you do. It becomes who you are. You don't need motivation to breathe. Likewise, you won't need motivation to act. You will have crossed the barrier of discipline until it has become identity. Most will never reach this point because they chase shortcuts. But the few who sustain 1,000 days discover a mind nothing can break. What you do for 1,000 days becomes what you are forever. Musashi ended his work with one phrase: never stray from a way. Simple, but devastating. Not because he never failed, but because he learned to return without hesitation. The mistake that destroys most people is not the fall, but the abandonment. You miss one workout and call it failure. Eat one dessert and quit the diet. Miss a week of writing and decide you aren't meant for it. Consistency dies because you confuse failure with the end. Musashi knew falling was inevitable. The secret was not to avoid failure, but to never remain in it. The true warrior returns to the path the same day, the same hour if possible. No drama, no guilt, no excuses. Just return. Modern life idolizes perfection, but it is precisely perfection that corrodes discipline. Expecting a path without mistakes is what sabotages you. Real consistency accepts the fall, but does not accept abandonment. The protocol is the rule of immediate return. Miss a day? Return the same day. Ate off plan? Fix it at the next meal. Broke a routine? Resume without justification. It is this speed in returning that separates the consistent from the inconsistent. Understand this. Consistency is not about never falling. It is about falling 1,000 times and rising 1,001. Each return is a declaration of war against quitting. Consistency is not never falling. It is never staying down. Consistency collapses the moment you become a slave to methods, masters, or tools. Musashi understood this better than anyone. He studied in temples, learned from monks, observed countless schools of swordsmanship, but he never attached himself to any of them. He took what worked, discarded the rest, and kept walking alone. That is why he remained sharp, while others grew soft. Those who tied their strength to a single teacher, a single style, or a single system were crushed the moment it failed them. Musashi respected every source of wisdom, but depended on none. His mind was never chained to external pillars. Now look at modern life. People cling to productivity apps, coaches, routines, supplements, systems. They convince themselves that without these supports they cannot function. But what happens when the app crashes, the coach disappears, or the system breaks? They collapse with it. Their discipline was never their own. Here's your protocol. Write down every tool, person, or system you believe you need to function at your best. Then, for 7 days, remove one of them. Force your mind to adapt without it. Notice the resistance. That discomfort is the mark of dependency. Train until you can perform just as well without it. True consistency is self-reliance. Respect the wisdom of others, but never surrender your independence. Use systems, but don't be owned by them. Learn from teachers, but never give them your judgment. Respect everything. Depend on nothing. The greatest enemy of consistency is not failure. It is success. Progress whispers that you can relax, that you've done enough, that you've already arrived. And the moment you believe it, you start to decline. Musashi never allowed himself that illusion. Even after dozens of victories, even undefeated after decades of duels, at age 50 he wrote, "I have not yet reached the way." Imagine that. 60 victories, every rival defeated, yet he still called himself a student. That humility kept him sharp, while others grew complacent. Modern life is full of this trap. You start waking earlier, eating better, training consistently, and within weeks you feel superior. You ease up, skip tracking, relax your standards. In a month you lose half of what you gained. Not because you lack strength, but because you mistook progress for the finish line. Here's the protocol. Once a month, deliberately seek someone who makes your discipline look weak. Find an athlete, thinker, or worker whose habits dwarf your own. Study them. Let their example remind you that you are still at the beginning. This humility is not weakness. It is fuel. Consistency thrives on eternal hunger. The moment you think you have arrived, you have already begun to fall. Musashi stayed a student until his last breath. That is why his mind never decayed. Those who think they've arrived have already begun to fall. Motivation is fragile. It has never sustained anyone for years. What transforms destinies is consistency, and Musashi proved this by living 3 decades on the same path. Walking alone, immune to comfort, repeating until it became identity, always returning to the way, respecting everything but depending on nothing, and never confusing progress with arrival. These are the codes that create inevitable results. Most people will close videos like this and go back to their old patterns, waiting for motivation to appear. But maybe you are different. Maybe you are tired of depending on motivation and are ready to build something stronger, a life driven by consistency. Don't wait for inspiration. Don't wait for tomorrow. Choose one simple action today. Make a decision alone. Take the cold shower. Repeat a mental habit. Return to the path after a failure. Function without a crutch. Or remind yourself you are still a student. Just one. That will be your first brick in 1,000 days. The way is in front of you. It does not demand perfection. It only demands that you never stray from it.